Hello, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to my channel. I've been trying to be more active on this channel. I want to apologize for my absence from YouTube. It's not that I don't enjoy making YouTube videos and I don't enjoy talking to you guys and engaging. I think I've just been going through like a metamorphosis of some sort, like such an intense and personal change within myself that I've been in my hermit stage, but I'm slowly coming out of that. So I just want to thank everyone who continues to show their love and their support. I appreciate you all so much. Now, I want to talk about how I came out to my parents, i.e., my mom. So, I transitioned about 10 and a half years ago, roughly. But it was in 2011 when I started college that I began the process. I call it my pre-transition. I was in therapy for about a year and a half before I even started dressing and living as a trans woman. I had to first mentally prepare myself and get into a space where I had all of the emotional tools that I needed to navigate this journey. Because when you transition, it doesn't only affect your life, it affects the lives of so many other people. And there's a period in transition where you really, really need, your tribe, your people. And the hope is that, family would be there. But as we know, for most trans people, most people within the LGBTQ+, many of us don't have a supportive network that is family. So that's why I thought it was important to talk about like my experience and how I dealt with coming out to my mom. So in 2011, I was in therapy that whole year. And in 2012, I had worked up enough courage to tell my mom that I was going to transition. Now, coming from a Black South African family, coming from a family that was deeply traditional, I mean, my mom is an African traditional healer, i.e., a witch doctor. So I came from a very cultural family. Now, growing up, my parents desperately wanted to have a little boy. My dad wanted to have a son so bad that when my sister was born, it was only after 3 months that he told people that no, she was in fact a girl. And her name actually in my language means we are still having more children. So my sister's name was Sisanda, and that means in my language, Sisanda, Sisanda, like we are still gonna have more kids. So they really, really wanted to have a little boy. So when I came into the world, they automatically were thrilled until I started, acting up or being myself essentially. It was very early on that my parents noticed that I was very feminine. I did everything that traditionally is associated with little girls. Like, I was very clingy, very nurturing, very, very, very sensitive. I liked fairies and Barbies and dolls and all of that. And I remember wanting to have long, pretty hair. And my parents were horrified. They were horrified. You have to think about it. This was like my dad passed away in 93. So I would have started acting feminine as soon as I could walk and talk. So during that time period, homosexuality was against the law. Never. So if you saw a child, and there was no language for a transgender, so they automatically thought that I was, some little gay kid, and they heavily discouraged this. When my dad did die, like when he passed on, um, my mom still discouraged any feminine behavior, but it was kind of like this. If there was a Barbie doll in the house and I happened to get my hands on it, my mom was like, you better not lose it, because I'm not going to buy you another one, because I will never spend my money on a doll for a little boy. So that was her attitude. She didn't really care that much that I acted feminine after my dad passed on, but it was something that she was deeply ashamed of and that she would try and discourage. And yeah, so it was like, it was weird. It was weird is the best way that I can describe it. As I grew up, obviously, through society, through church, through everyone else in my family, I was, told that, I should act more masculine, I should behave like A, B, C, and D. They wanted me to act like Tupac. But that was the idea. Everyone was like, we have to make this little kid hard so that, when the kid grows up, they're not like gay or whatever. Never became gay, but I did transition and become transgender. Now, given the history of this, given how my mom was about me being feminine, you would have thought she would have been very homophobic or transphobic. Quite the opposite. When I was 13 and 14, my mom, she met these cross-dressing gay guys, and they were like her best friends. Like, they were always hanging out, and she didn't really understand what was going on with them, but she absolutely loved being in their surroundings, presence. She loved hanging out with them. And I remember wondering, if she's so open and friendly towards these people, how would she feel if I were if I were gay, or if at the time, I couldn't even accept that I could transition. So the only thing that I thought was within the realms of possibilities was, being a gay man. And I'd often wonder, how would my mom react if I came out, or if I started cross-dressing? But at this time, I was in the Mormon Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Yeah, I know. And the idea of being gay or being anything within the LGBTQ plus was so heavily frowned upon in the greater community that I was in, like the Mormon community. So all those feelings, I just had to shut them deep, 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 deep inside of me. And it wasn't until college, really, that I went through therapy for a year, and then I decided, I'm going to tell my mom. When I told my therapist, she was not supportive of the idea, given the fact that, my mom had also been not the best parent to me, and our relationship had not been the healthiest. In fact, it was quite toxic, and there was an element of neglect, there was an element of narcissism within our relationship, within that dynamic. And the very real fear from my psychologist, as well as my college friends, was, girl, you know how your mama is. Don't tell her nothing. Wait until you graduate and then come out. And for me, you have to understand, I was already 21 at that point, and I'd wanted to be myself and finally be the person that I knew that I was on the inside, and I knew that I was going to transition. And I almost felt, and maybe this is just me being like a little African kid or a little pussy kid, that I low-key needed my mother's blessing or my family's blessing in order for me to do this, which at the time I would have never, ever, 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 ever admitted to myself or to anyone. But that was the reality, you know what I mean? So I go back after college. I go back home, and I sit my mom down. We watch a documentary about transgender people, about trans people when they were younger. And as we're watching this, I'm asking her questions about, do you remember how I would always pretend that I had long hair and I wanted to be called Katie? And I would always tell you that I was a girl. Remember that? And my mom was like, oh, well, you know, you were so traumatized because your dad passed away, so obviously you identified with things that were feminine. And I'm like, yeah, this predates that. So I would try to explain and try and bring her, you know, remembrance back to a point in time where I was clearly acting out. I even remember telling her about that one time where the school complained about me because I basically was acting like a little girl standing in the girls' line, and everyone was treating me as though I was a girl. And one of the new teachers who'd come into the kindergarten noticed this and was like, listen, your kid is acting very inappropriately. Please handle this. She was just like, there's an explanation for all of this. And the explanation is that it was due to trauma. Now, be that as it may, and I've talked to many psychologists, and we've discussed, you know, why I transitioned, whether or not transitioning was the best route for me. Whatever led me to transitioning, although I believe that I've always felt this way since I could articulate, but whatever the reasons were, at the end of the day, I'm at this point now wanting to transition. And I sat my mom and I sat her down and I basically said, Mom, like, I have always wanted to be, and I've always felt that I was a woman, and I can't continue living feeling like I'm trapped. I can't continue going on feeling like I have to pretend like I am someone else for the rest of the world. I have to live a life that is authentic. And I remember my mom being like, yeah, this all sounds expensive. It sounds like it's going to cost you a lot of money. And she was like, why don't you just be gay? You know, like, I know tons of gay people. I could even introduce you to somebody. That was her response. And I remember like laughing and thinking to myself, well, it's wonderful that you find this funny and you're encouraging in some way. But I was like, I need to transition. I need to be true to myself. And she looked at me square in the eye and she was like, you know, I don't want people to ever judge me, so I will never judge you. I don't understand any of this. I don't know how you will transition or how you're going to finance that, because I'm out. But she basically said that she wishes me well, and she supports me in this, and she hopes that I can finally have the kind of happiness that I've always said that I've wanted. And if it's this route that's going to lead to it, then you do you, boo. She literally said something that I live by, which is, free will is an absolute of your existence. And I think that's so, so, so beautiful. Like, I try to live by those words. Hold on. And we're back. So I try to live by those words that free will is an absolute of your existence. If you live a life that is authentic, not harming anyone else, not bringing physical, emotional, mental pain to anyone else, and you live in a state of love and light, free will is an absolute of your existence. You have a right to be yourself. You have a right to grow and to develop in the way that is the most authentic and true to you. And even though, me and my mom, we've had our problems and continue to have our problems, having her be such an ally at one of the most vulnerable points in my life when I was basically coming out to the world was so transformative and so healing. Not only to the perception that I had of her and our relationship, but healing for me in this journey. So you would have thought it stopped there. But the next day, my mom and I, we were talking, and she was like, so you're going to start wearing women's clothes, right? And like straightening your hair and all of that. And I was like, yeah, like eventually I'm going to get on hormones. I explained the whole, process. At the time in South Africa, I think you had to see about 3 separate psychologists, and they ran a few tests on you, and then they gave you the go-ahead to start hormones. So I was still in the process of therapy at that stage, and I would only begin living as a woman, I think, in the next 2 years. So I was still, at the grassroots level of my transition. And I remember my mom being like, okay, well, if you're gonna wear female clothes, let's go to, the supermarket and get you something. So me and my mom, we go to this department store called Jet in South Africa. And I'll never forget, I was still very, very anxious. I had never actually bought anything female for myself at that point. So having my mom there was actually really, really awesome. So I'm standing like at the male section because I'm too chicken shit to go stand at the female section. And my mom goes to the female section, she finds a pair of jeans, and she asks, the woman working there, hey, do you have this and this and so size? And the woman is like, yeah, we have a men's that's exactly like this. As she was speaking, like honestly, because my mom literally was like, stopped her dead in her tracks and said, no, like, we're in the right section. Matter of fact, she called me from where I was standing and said, come stand here. Hell wrong with you? And she was like, we're in the right section. This is for my child. Where can I find one in my child's size? And I think because of how matter-of-fact my mom is and how intimidating she can be, the woman just looked at her and was like, okay, well, there you go. And we ended up getting a lot more stuff, and from that moment, I've never been afraid to go out and get what I want. And I honestly do have my mom to thank for that. Now, there was a period during my therapy where I considered detransitioning, and there were so many other factors. I was being bullied at university, and the church that I was with had essentially damn near performed an exorcism on me to try and get me to detransition. And I remember I called my mom and I told her that I was thinking of detransitioning, and she was like, "Well, this is your life, your journey. If it's too hot in the kitchen, you need to get out. Like, go somewhere where you're comfortable. Um, but don't end yourself trying to be something that's not working. And if you do want to continue transitioning, great. Just keep me in the loop because I want to know if I have a son or a daughter." Um, so my family has an extremely dark sense of humor. Um, I do apologize if anything that I say comes across as crass or, that's just how we talk. But I appreciated that conversation. And you know why I appreciated it? Because at that time, when I was thinking of detransitioning and when I did detransition, and everyone else was so politicized, people were like, this is terrible, like, God, biology, this, that, the other. Other people were like, no, like, you need to fight for yourself. How dare you detransition? You've let us all down. And I was stuck in the middle, and yeah, like, I remember it felt so good knowing that at least, my family is there. Whatever I decide to be or not be, my family's there. Now, two things can be true about family or about a situation with relatives. Yes, my family was very supportive and encouraging regarding my transition, but we still have other issues that need to be ironed out and worked through. But I stand in absolute gratitude at the fact that I came from a family and a space and a community. And when I say a community, I'm talking about my family community, which is family, that was supportive of me. Actually, it wasn't even only my mom and my family, it was not relatives, but like friends of relatives. It was like my mom's friends, like everyone within that circle. The overall writing theme was to be loving and supportive of whatever journey that I chose to walk down, and not every trans person has that. If you're in a situation where your family has let you go or cut you off, know that my heart breaks for you. I know that it's not easy to feel like you're walking down this road and you don't have family, but I want you to know this, that you are loved and you are supported, and there are other people who are walking down the same road as you, who are able to create, their own future family. That's always been my solace, and that's what I've always said to my friends that are trans, that were in different situations, like living on the streets or like, escorting or whatever. I was like, okay, fine, like, your family was trash and they didn't support you, but guess what? Your life's not over, and you get to have a new family. You do. You get to have a new family, and you get to choose that new family. I wish you only the best. I love you. Thank you. I've talked too much. See you next time. Auf Wiedersehen.